Anticipating the changes to IRC's regulations over the next 2 years, federal court case law on the intra-company transfer and SUV program on this edition of ImmPulse.
I'm Howard Greenberg.
Hi, I'm Naman Hamid.
Well, what are we going to talk about today? The legislation is coming.
So we see that IRCC gave a forecast on some regulatory changes that may occur in the next 2 years. And there's quite a variety of different proposed changes that I think will be interesting to talk about.
So let's get down to the fine print. There's a couple of these regulation packages coming, which could be of concern.
Right.
Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, one of the proposed changes I found quite interesting. We know that there's an emphasis for the government to reduce the number of work permits, but the regulation discussion point is about whether to introduce language testing into the IMP, the International Mobility Program. So
Intra-company transfers.
that could, by way of background, you either are in the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, which is LMIA, or LMIA exempt. And that would apply to intra-company transfers, potentially work permits under trade agreements. What do you think they're thinking about by introducing this new requirement of a language test?
Well, obviously they are concerned that individuals who they're issuing work permits to may not have full language capability in English and or French. And so at this time, it appears that it'll be everybody subject to a language test to meet the bare minimum.
And interestingly, in the preface, they talked about the fact that this may encourage settlement by getting better language skills and promoting a population that's likely to get PR, although we know our PR process is quite challenging, so I'm not sure if that will do it.
It's in the early stages. We'll have to see, what that policy finally looks like.
And we're hoping that there's some common sense. If an executive in the United States has been working in the U.S., educated in the U.S.,
Yes.
to have to get a language test would seem
Yes.
to be a bit of a hardship.
At a time when they're trying to reduce bureaucracy, it seems
Right.
they're adding more and more
Right.
to the checklist.
Yeah. There was another section of the proposed regulations I thought you'd find interesting. You've spoken a lot about the strong borders policies about increasing authority.
They are granting to an officer the authority in circumstances yet to be determined, the ability to cancel an immigration document. That presents all sorts of challenges. We've already seen in our practice that officers have canceled a PR visa at the port of entry, even after signing off on it. And what kinds of checks and balances can be put in place to take away someone's rights when they've accrued those rights. They've got to the point where they've got their status and they have their status in hand and they lose it.
Well, what do you think, Howard? We know that immigration policy changes are coming rapidly.
Right.
It's becoming quite complex.
Right.
And we see that the program's putting more power in the hands of officers,
Right.
often where there's no counsel anywhere in sight.
Right. Well, look, I think that this is an indicator that there is concern about compliance, there's concern about being frauded, and there's concern about getting the right people in Canada. It might be a little bit of an overreaction,
Right.
because the system has been so loose for a number of years that we've seen people come through the system and we kind of scratch our heads and wonder how they made it through all of the review processes. Right. So all of a sudden they're putting the tools in place to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think there are a few other areas in that regulatory package that were interesting. With regard to immigration, administrative monetary penalties.
Right.
That is also an area of hot topic in the market.
Well, that's being handled by a number of stakeholders. The bar associations and various legal groups across Canada are concerned about findings against lawyers who are already being controlled and administered by law societies. And then there's consultants out there who will also be supervised to a large extent in terms of what their representations are by this new legislation. So it could be a real game changer if they start finding.
And under this potential regime, it would also apply to ghost consultants.
Ghost consultants already have a problem. This regulation was designed to punish, if you will, recognized lawyers and consultants who are acting within their mandate. Ghost consultants are invisible.
Right.
I'm not sure that this is going to reach that.
Let's see. And lastly, I thought it was also interesting. Hot topic is PR applications where individuals who are applying for PR are not disclosing their spouse because they're able to get additional points. And there's also some discussion in the regulatory package about the penalties around that area because it's been quite topical right now.
I'm not quite sure if the IRCC has found the solution to that yet. I mean, maybe it's just the way that the assessment process is set up. It seems kind of odd that your spouse takes you to a lower point total than if you did it alone.
Right.
If you were in process by yourself. So I think that needs a revisit.
Right. So it's a good read for everyone who's watching. I think
Right.
all those regulatory packages gives you a sense of where the department's going.
Except that we can conclude with the comment that things are going to change.
Right.
There's lots of legislation coming. There's lots of control coming. There's consultations that have started with various stakeholders on what the plan should look like for 2026 and beyond. And it's certainly not about opening the doors.
Right. Right. Why don't we switch gears, talk about a couple of cases.
Okay.
One area that's near and dear to our practice is the intra-company transfer.
What's the issue of the day there? One of the cases in our ImmPulse notes an issue of the qualifying relationship.
Right.
Maybe you can explain
Yeah,
that.
maybe we'll just step back. The two operational memorandums have been introduced on the intra-company transfer, tightening it quite a bit.
Right.
This particular case, where it looked like there was an error in preparation, was the company overseas was owned by a group of individuals.
Right.
And it wasn't clear to the officer that the same group of individuals were controlling both entities.
Right.
Lack of evidence to confirm that.
Right.
Might have been an argument that there was like actual control by one of the members, but again, the importance is you have to explain this very clearly in your application.
Right.
And have evidence to support your process around that.
I mean, the ownership relationship should line up between all the entities involved.
Right, and in this case, it's a private company, so they looked at who the shareholders were.
Right.
And one shareholder was listed in the Canadian company, but the minority shareholders were in the foreign company.
Right. So they didn't line up exactly.
Right. There could have been a creative argument to explain effective control, but again, it's really important when you're making these cases that
Right.
you explain the rationale behind the ICT.
Right. The judge is supposed to decide based on the information provided by the parties.
Was it reasonable? Right.
Okay.
Also, lastly, we see an SUV case. It's worth
Okay.
a read. In that case, the judge took the position that you have to make your case. And what we know with work permits in the SUV program, the guidelines on the website don't tell you all the requirements clearly. And in this case, it wasn't prepared well. There wasn't the language test. There wasn't proof of filing.
Right.
It wasn't laid out properly for the officer.
It wasn't complete enough.
Right.
It's enough for the officer to say, this file doesn't have all of the key documentation necessary for me to make a decision.
And we know even in the best of cases, SUV work permits are tough to get through,
Right.
let alone when you have any defect.
Right, exactly. So the lesson of the day is, if you're preparing it to your fullest, double prepare it to your
Exactly.
fullest, because they're looking much more closely than they did a year or two ago.
Right. Yeah, pay attention. There'll be more insights on these new regulations
Right.
as they continue to develop. Thank you very much for joining this episode of ImmPulse. If you have any questions or clarifications, please feel free to reach out to Greenberg Hamid.
I'm Howard Greenberg.
Hi, I'm Noman Hamid.
How do you want to work on in this?
Right.
I'm also Howard Greenberg over here too. I'm beside myself.
Go.
Go. I can leave the room?
No.
Oh, continue. I'm Howard Greenberg.
Hi, I'm Noman Hamid.
Well, today, Nomid Haman, comma,